Hello everyone! I know Shenyun leaks are hot off the press right now, but I decided to circle back to Navia one last time to see if I was right on her or not. But before I do, you're probably asking why I got so many Genesis crystals even though I know it's a bad deal. Say hello to my first ever sponsor, Loot Bar. Navia's banner is here, and if you're like me, you're about to make some very bad financial decisions. Genesis crystals are expensive, but that's where Loot Bar comes into play. Loot Bar is a website that offers to buy the Genesis crystals for you with nothing but your UID and server. This means it's also a pretty damn good way to buy some crystals for your friends. It also works for Honkai Star Rail and plenty of other games. And for those concerned for their safety, I tried it and it worked out just fine. That's because Loot Bar only buys through miHoYo's official channels. When using Loot Bar, you gain twice the amount of Genesis crystals you would normally get, so it's very useful to bulk buy as well. There's also human customer service 24 hours a day. The prices on Loot Bar's website are also lower. You want to buy the most expensive pack 4 times? Usually that'd be $400, but with Loot Bar, that's only $295, a 25% discount. Use the link in the description or pinned comment and sign up today for an additional 10% discount. First of all, let's start with what I believe to be my biggest mistake when I covered Navia. I completely underestimated her constellations. I believe that her constellations were only a slight improvement, but I've been able to defeat bosses in Abyss with 1 rotation without the 3rd E. That is something I didn't believe she could do. Granted, it's not the most consistent in the world, but the fact is that I was wrong about it. I was still right about her weapon. It's still only slightly better than Serpent Spine, but man, those constellations allow me to hit some really funny numbers. You can tell from the gameplay in the background that she hits like a freight train. Her C2 allows you to get 1 extra stack of her skill if you EQ at the beginning of the rotation, so that's very convenient. Her C6 is also just strong. Lots of damage. It's also that I overestimated the HP on most bosses. I thought C6 Navia could barely one-rot them, but nah, she obliterates. Now, second of all, the Zhongli Albedo comparison. I now believe that Albedo is simply better in nearly every scenario. The extra geo application, the ability to easily put his flower down again, the energy. Albedo is a much better pick than Zhongli, and I overrated Zhongli. I thought Tenacity would be more consistent than it actually was. Shame on me. Overall, I believe Zhongli to be overrated, and at this point I would rather use Goro. You heard me! Goro can run Elegy, which makes up for the lack of Tenacity, and at C6 he gets 20% crit damage. His source of interruption resistance also can't be broken like Zhongli's shield, so overall, I just prefer Goro. In my Navia buff video, I also stated that I believed the E buff to be quite minor, and that she still had a similar power level. This was straight up wrong. I feel she desperately needed that E buff to turn her into what she is now. It's a very major change. The buff to her E was also a buff to her constellations, her weapon, and her front load. Really big things overall. I can't believe I had the guts to call that a minor change. Another thing is that using Navia's E 3 times per rotation is a lot more achievable than I had anticipated. I thought it required some serious rotation extension, but it really doesn't. Most content should die in 3 to 4 rotations, so the cooldown timing should be fine in most scenarios. The amount of stacks for said skills won't be super high, but it'll still be usable, and it still does outperform using your E only twice by quite a bit. So before we head on to what I got right, why don't you smash the subscribe button, like the video, and leave a comment. It boosts me further into the algorithm, so much appreciated. So now getting into the things that I got right on Navia. I would say that I was right about Navia's overall power level, which in my opinion is the most important thing. I always believed Navia to be a solid DPS, but not top of the crop or anything. Someone with very high damage, but not the highest. And I would say I was right. On single target, she has some very high numbers. In AoE she does falter some more, but I saw that coming, and so I chose not to talk about it too much. She did kind of surprise me though. I thought it was going to be worse. Another thing I would say was important for me to get right is that her front load is very strong. But I feel like I undersold it as well. One of the best parts of Navia is that you can control when you do your damage. That makes Navia pretty good on bosses like the Dorito, where you don't have a lot of time until he goes invisible. You can even destroy his construct very quickly and prevent him from going invisible in the first place. I would also like to mention how it was right about how flexible her teams are. I think specifically in terms of the Geo slot. I've experimented a lot in my Navia teams, usually with Yelan or Farina, but my Geo slot has always have a lot of variation. From Goro to Zhongli to Albedo to Ningguang, it feels like almost every Geo character works decently enough with her. This does also present room for improvement, as there is no true best Geo with her. There's also her sub-DPS options. Yelan and Farina do beat everyone else, but Fisho and Xiangling are, like I predicted, pretty damn decent as well. Not that good compared to the other options though. I did believe Farina is uncomfortable because of Bennett, but hopefully Chiori heals team-wide. And then the last thing is Navia's playstyle. I knew she was an on-fielder from the very start. As an on-fielder with the capability to off-field. That is how I saw her. So many other people around me were telling me that she was an off-field bot, but oh boy, I proved them wrong. Every single video I saw Navia use her on-field, except for this one showcase with Navia and Noelle. Like I said, an on-field carry with sub-DPS potential. I did underrate her sub-DPS potential though, as it is quite strong and I neglected to talk about it. And then actually last but not least, I think Navia's ease of use and her satisfying gameplay is another one of her strongest assets. I am covering this one last because it's not really a meta thing, but I think it's important to mention just how goddamn fun this character is to play. Because a lot of characters will be regretted because they don't enjoy the playstyle. For example, Caesar, Hu Tao, Ganyu, and Sino are some of the most regretted pulls in Genshin Impact because people just hate their playstyle. But Navia, according to everyone who I've talked to, seems to have been very fun and satisfying, and no one seems to really be upset with her. So, what do you think of Navia now that she's out? I'm going to be covering Gaming and Shenyun soon, so stay tuned for that. Subscribe if you want to see it, and like and comment to boost my channel. It helps a lot. But that's going to be enough for me. Peace.